Luke chapter 1, beginning in verse 26. It says, in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. And he came to her and said, greetings, O favored one, the Lord is with you. But she was greatly troubled at the saying, and tried to discern what sort of greeting this might be. And the angel said to her, do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord God will give to him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. And Mary said to the angel, how will this be, since I am a virgin? And the angel answered her, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore, the child to be born will be called Holy, the Son of God. And behold, your relative Elizabeth in her old age has also conceived a son. And this is the 6th month with her who was called barren, for nothing will be impossible with God. And Mary said, behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. And the angel departed from her. Now let's make sure first we understand that it was in the 6th month when the angel Gabriel appeared. That is a significant month. That is not significant because it was June. That is not significant because it was anything on the calendar of mankind. Rather, that God did a miracle in the womb of an older lady, and her priest husband came together and in their old age had a baby that was prophesied to be the baby that would be the one who would prepare the way for the coming of the Son of God. In the 6th month of her pregnancy. In other words, in the 6th month of a timeline, a prophetic timeline that God had established, God sent an angel to speak to Mary. Sometimes in my life, I want God to do things according to my calendar. I want him to do things according to the 6th month that I determined to be. I don't always want to look at his 6th month. I don't always want to be concerned with, God, what is your timing in this matter? I'm always looking at like, what's my timing? God, this needs to happen right now. Why does it need to happen right now? Because I said so. But it wasn't about my 6th month. It wasn't about the month of June. It was about the 6th month, the beginning of the 3rd trimester of the pregnancy of the one who was prophesied to prepare the way. That's what this was about. And in that month, the angel Gabriel appeared to Mary. And in that month, Mary stood up and went to that house with the Son of God inside of her. And when she came into the presence of Elizabeth, the child that was within Elizabeth, named John, felt the presence of Jesus in the womb of Mary. And he literally, in a moment, was filled with the Holy Spirit. In a prophetic answer to what was said to his father Zacharias when the angel visited him and said, your son will be filled with the Spirit in his mother's womb. If you happen to find yourself in this room pregnant, just please understand that your child has always been a child in there, and it's important what you allow them to hear. It's important what presence you allow them to be in. They're not your child when they're born. They're your child right now. They're God's child right now, and it's important in whose presence we bring them into. When the child was in the presence of Jesus, the child in the womb was filled with the Holy Spirit. God's timeline. God's timeline is always better than our timeline. God's timeline is always far more significant than our timeline. I think we would find ourselves a lot happier if we would ever just decide to submit to what God is doing rather than try and force everything we want to see. What is God doing? I want to get behind what God's doing. I want my life to be in alignment with what God is doing. I want to quit complaining about what I'm not seeing God do in the moment that I want to see him do it. And I want to learn to lift my eyes up and see what he is doing and accept the significance of the month where God is doing what he's doing. no matter what it is. So it was in the 6th month that this angel came to visit Mary. And I love what he said to her. Highly favored one. She didn't feel very highly favored. When he finished his greeting, she was troubled at his saying. Make sure we understand this, because sometimes, I don't know how you are, but sometimes I will read something in the gospel, and because I already know what the angel was going to say to her later, I think she's troubled about something that he was about to say, and I missed the significance that she was only troubled by what he just said. Mary was living this in real time. She wasn't troubled because she was going to give birth to the Son of God. She wasn't troubled because she was a virgin who was going to conceive. She was troubled simply by a greeting. All the angel said to her was that God was with her and that she was highly favored, and it troubled her. Sometimes we're not as troubled by what God says he will do. Rather, we are troubled by who he says he's going to do it through. What has God said he'll do through you? Do you actually believe it? Let's consider Mary for a minute. Sometimes we wonder, well, I mean, goodness, what was her problem? Why was she troubled? Why would that even matter to her? Let's consider where Mary was from. Mary was from Nazareth. Now, Nazareth had about 400 people. If you'll remember from weeks ago, it was Nathanael who looked at Philip when they were talking about Jesus being from Nazareth, and he said, can anything good come from Nazareth? The Pharisees said, make sure that no prophet ever comes from Galilee. In other words, that place in that region, we're not concerned. We don't want something good coming out of that place. Who in here is from Mulberry? No, for real. Mulberry, all right. Bartow. See, I can pick on places. I mean, we're like from Lakeland, right? Like Lakeland. But Mulberry? Bartow? Where else? We got too many people from Bartow. Where else are we going? Fort Meade, how about that? Hey, Fort Meade. Let's do Fort Meade. We have one lone soldier from Fort Meade. Brother Larry's from Fort Meade. Yeah, Frostproof. We did Frostproof at 9:30. I got some grief from Frostproof, so I'm going to leave Frostproof out of this. Let's do Fort Meade. All right, just consider this. Okay, look at Mary. She's from Nazareth, so it'd be like you being from Frostproof. Fort Meade, you're right. I'm sorry. Fort Meade. I digress. Yes, Fort Meade. Keep me honest. She's from Nazareth. He's from Fort Meade. So now let's consider your economic position. Mary was not from a wealthy family. There wasn't the middle class. It was princes or peasants. And we know that she did not have a lot because when she and Joseph, after Jesus had been born, we see this in Luke chapter 2 and verse 22. It says, after Jesus was born, Mary and Joseph came to Jerusalem to offer a sacrifice according to what is said in the law of the Lord, that you would give 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. For those of you that have no idea why your true love sent to you 2 turtle doves on the 2nd day of Christmas, that's why. That's where it comes from, right there. 2 turtle doves. But the law in Leviticus doesn't just say 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. It says, bring a lamb. That was the appropriate sacrifice. Bring a lamb. But if you cannot afford a lamb, then bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. So we know they couldn't afford a lamb, which means they weren't in the prince's category, but they could only afford 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, which means they're in the peasant category. So now, not only are you from Fort Meade, but you're broke. Now let's consider about this whole idea about her being betrothed. Betrothed, not engaged, means she was sort of too young to get married, but she was old enough to have a baby. So there was a waiting period there. So you're young, you're from Fort Meade, and you have no money. And we understand by the way that their family structures worked that when you were married, you would live in the family of your husband, and he was a carpenter, and so he would be away because there wasn't anything to build in Nazareth, so he would be away for months at a time doing work while you were at home with your mother-in-law. We're getting the picture. So now, you're in Fort Meade, you don't have any money, your husband is away at work, and you're in the 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment with your mother-in-law. In that place, the angel came to her and said, God is with you, and you're favored. And we can't imagine God being with us in the middle of what we see most of the time. We can't imagine that God has favored us sometimes when we look at our bank account or when we look at our job or we look at what we have or what we're doing. We cannot imagine that God would be with us. But the angel showed up to Mary in that place and he said, you are highly favored. We see this similar conversation really in the life of Gideon. For those of you that are new to the gospel, Gideon was a judge in the Old Testament. And this was a time when the people of God were facing a lot of tribulation. They were facing a lot of economic uncertainty. They were just sovereignty uncertainties in the sense that there was a nation coming against them, and it was potential that they would be annihilated. And so they're just in this place, and there's idolatry all over the place, and it just didn't seem good. And in that moment, there was an angel that came to see this person named Gideon in Judges chapter 6 and verse 12. The angel appeared to Gideon and said to him, God is with you, O mighty man of valor. And then Gideon said to him, please, Lord, if the Lord is with us, then why are all of these things happening to us? And where are all the wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us? Now, what I kind of like about this, I'm going to take a side journey real quick. Where are all the wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us? Let's talk to the young folks and the old folks in the room. Not the middle-aged people like me. I get to just be exempt from this conversation. Young folks, old folks. Have you ever, talk to the young people first. Have you ever been in the middle of something and somebody older than you kind of come in a judgmental manner and be like, I don't actually know what you're doing because back in our day, here's how we used to do it. As if that day was just somehow far superior to your day. I would just like to insert that the same one complaining about this day, reveling in this day, is the same person that the one who was reveling in this day was complaining about to this one. So it's sort of if you're young, it's a rite of passage that you have to go through that somebody older than you has to complain about you. It's just how it works. Like the world has changed drastically. I mean, you just think about Christmas for a minute. Look at how much Christmas has changed. Go back 25 years. Christmas looked a lot different 25 years ago. You guys remember the Sears Wish book? Like, oh man. If it wasn't in the Sears Wish book or at the store across the street, you weren't getting it. You wouldn't get it. That was the only way. And you had to order the thing, whatever it was, like 2 weeks early so that it would show up by the mail because you had to call on the telephone and sit on there for a long time on hold and give all these product numbers. There was no copy, paste, submit. It was Z71486. No, I'm sorry. 1348, and it just went on. And now they have these giftful apps. They can just find whatever they want, put it all together, send it to the grandparents. Here's a link, get me this. You didn't get anything like that from your grandparents. 25 years ago, you got $15 or 2 pairs of underwear. That's what you got from your grandmother. She had no idea what a teenager wanted. What she thought was, you probably need more underwear. I have no idea why I got so many socks and underwear as a kid. Or you got $15. Now, when I got married, it was interesting because my great-grandmother sent me a check. Same check for $15. But in the memo, she said, Shawn gets $10 and Abigail gets $5. Like that's how Christmas was. And we act like things were so much better in the old days. They weren't better, they were just different. And we're always finding ourselves complaining about what's going on today. You see young parents today and think, oh, they don't know what they're doing. Do you realize how hard it is to raise kids today? Do you have like any idea, any parent that is raising a kid in any generation with a cell phone is uniquely more complicated than raising a kid before the cell phone? Like today, we have to look for trap phones, we have to look for dummy screens, we have to make sure there's not some hotspot they're tapped into where they're bypassing the family Wi-Fi with all the protections on there. Like all you had to do 25 years ago is lift the mattress up, make sure there wasn't a magazine under there. They're doing good. Not today. No, not today. So Gideon is in this spot where he's like, where's all the stuff that you guys recounted to us? Because I don't see it right now. And so then the angel said, well, here's what's going to happen. God is going to use you to save Israel. Let me say this to you. When you see a problem that bothers you so much that you are willing to complain about it, you need to do one of two things. You either need to allow the power of God to give you the power to solve the problem or shut your mouth. That's it. God is either one, you're just being a grouch, or two, God's put something in you to stir you up to something that's wrong. And if he stirred you up, he'll give you the power to fix it. Gideon wants to know all these things, and God says, okay, then I'll call you to fix it. Don't be surprised when God calls you to fix a problem. So then Gideon says to the angel in verse 15, he says, please, Lord, how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least of my father's house. And the Lord said to him, but I will be with you. I will be with you. Now, what just blows my mind about that text is that God did not argue with him that they were the weakest and he was the least. God didn't say, you guys aren't that bad. And let me just say this about encouragement. It's always honest. Encouragement is always true. They were the weakest in Manasseh, and Manasseh wasn't in the top 5. And you know what? Gideon was the least in his father's house. And God didn't argue with him about him being the least or them being the weakest. But what he said was, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. Why? Because I'm with you. And this was something that Mary had to ponder in her heart. It's something that she had to discern because she's simply looking at being a young girl from Nazareth with no money, betrothed to a man that's going to be gone all the time working, and she's going to be living with her mother-in-law. That's all she could see. And God had to say, yeah, that's not what I'm concerned about. I am with you, and you are highly favored. Why? Because I'm with you. Anytime you have Jesus with you, you're the winner. Like, there is no weapon that can be formed against you that can prosper when it's you and Jesus. There is nobody that can snatch you out of the hand of Jesus when it's you and Jesus. When it's you and Jesus, it's always the majority. Always. And so we just accept that. We stand firm in that, knowing who we are in him. There was this time in my life when I just got married. We Went to Orlando for a honeymoon. We were going out the next morning to go to Denver. And I was young. I was 22. My wife was 20. By the way, if you're in this room and you're that young and you're talking to your parents about marriage and they say no, they're probably right. It's really, really young to get married. But yeah, so I'm 22, she's 20. There was no Google Maps at the time. Did not exist. She says, what time do we need to leave in the morning? Times, how far away is the airport? I'm like, oh, it's like right here. I think like 10 minutes or something. It was 25 minutes away. We got in the car, we started driving to the airport, and it's far. Like, it's one of those where you think you're about there, and then it says, airport 15 miles away, you know, that sign, and you're like, whoa, that one. So then you just drive a little faster and drive a little crazier, and anyhow, we get there, and this is pre-9/11, so airports were not as locked down as they are today. And so we are running through the airport, like running. We barely get to the gate. We're far later than we should have been. They're about to shut the door. We give them our ticket. They give us a new ticket. We get on the plane. It's like, whew, we made it. We walk on the plane. Everybody is seated. Everybody's stuff is stowed, and it's just the two of us. They're waiting for us. And now we're walking down this, you know, with the eyes. The only thing just about as bad is if you ever get on a plane with a baby. Man, you get on the plane with a baby, and like, especially if it's Southwest and there's that empty seat beside them, they're like, it's about like that. But anyhow, we get about halfway down, and I'm like, these numbers are getting bigger and bigger, and there's no number 4. So I said to the stewardess, where's like 4A, B, whatever, that's what I'm looking for. She goes, first class. First class. They gave away our ticket to a standby flyer and then had to upgrade us because we were late to first class. Some of you are late. You didn't buy an upgraded ticket. Everybody's waiting on you. You're walking down the little aisle of life, and all of a sudden, God just decides all by himself to show up at your house and say, you are highly favored and I'm with you. And when God does that, you just say, here I am. Don't argue with Jesus. Say, me, come on, me. Let me say it. Yes, you. Let me be the one to encourage you this morning. And you say, I don't know, man. I don't know how it's me. It doesn't matter. Yes, you. But I don't understand this the way that I should understand this. Yes, you. When God makes his decision, don't you argue with God. You let him use you for whatever he has set you apart for you to do. Yes, you. And so Mary is having this just struggle. She had this question. Don't be afraid of questions. Let me say this to everybody. Don't get nervous when someone asks questions that you took for granted. Don't get nervous when someone has a question about their faith that you didn't ask. All that is the sign of a generation that wants to go just a little bit deeper than the generation went before. I'm glad we answered these questions. I'm glad we answered them well. But now that we have this knowledge, we want to go deeper for the revelation of this generation. And the revelation of this generation will emerge from a different set of questions. And so I don't look at the person asking a different question and think there's something wrong with them. Rather, I look at myself and say, I got to dig a little deeper. I got to pray a little harder. I got to seek God for revelation, because it's not enough to ride on the past answers of yesterday, but I have to have daily bread for the generation of questions that are being asked today. Why? So that God can fill their house the same way he filled my house. She was trying to discern what the greeting meant. And then the angel began to explain it to her. And here's where I want to just kind of take it slow for a second and maybe be slightly remedial. Because there will be many of you in this room that you already get this. But, you know, there's a generation that was raised on VeggieTales. And nothing wrong with VeggieTales. All our kids watch VeggieTales. Never, ever been a show like VeggieTales. Sorry. But Gideon wasn't a trumpet player in the band. Okay? That's not what he was. And David wasn't a tomato. And like we get to Christmas time and we get creative. We tell stories about people, we have no idea who, we just make them up. Sure, they existed, they had to exist, but we don't know anything about them, so we just make up a story. And it's fun, and it's exciting, but it's not the gospel, it's just entertainment. And sometimes we can get a little bit, if we get our doctrine from our entertainment, rather than our entertainment from our entertainment, we can get a mess in a hurry. Like in a hurry. So I just want to take a minute and make sure we understand that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, was literally God who became flesh and was born of a virgin. There's no other story that applies here. Like one of the smash hits of our evangelical generation is a show that is filmed on property that's owned by Mormons, distributed by a company owned by Mormons. And the director of the show says that it's fine because Christians and Mormons worship the same Jesus. Now, he's an evangelical. He's just wrong. Christians and Mormons don't worship the same Jesus. Mormons don't worship Jesus, the Son of God, God from God, God who became flesh. Their version of Jesus is a false Jesus. It is a false gospel. Their version of Jesus is somebody out there on a planet somewhere who then became a man so that he could do the right things to become God. And he was the first one to do it, so he's pretty awesome. That's a false Jesus. And so if somebody, just in order to be able to use somebody's movie set, has to say, well, hey, we worship the same Jesus, I get nervous. Maybe I shouldn't be nervous. But for those of you that are into conspiracies, I get nervous. Mormons and Christians aren't the same. Look, don't look at me like that. I have to behave Christmas Eve because you're bringing all your relatives. I'll be nice on Christmas Eve. This is my last Sunday this year to just be me. Okay? And I get nervous when we're like cozying up to the Mormons. I really do. Like, I want to put this in perspective. What if a whole bunch of Muslims created this movie set of Jerusalem that was just so perfect? And then we decided to go film a Christian movie on the Muslim movie set. And that was a little bit weird, but we were fine. And then somebody says, what are you doing? Like, why are you filming this on a Muslim movie set? And we said, oh, well, we worship the same God. It's the God of Abraham either way. We wouldn't think twice. No, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not Abraham, Ishmael. Like, we would never say it's the same God. So I just want to make sure if we want to enjoy entertainment, we enjoy entertainment, but we're not willing to say that this is the same Jesus. Deal? All right. It's The Chosen, by the way. If you're curious what show I'm talking about, that's the show. So, cool, like crowd fun, the whole thing, whatever. Just know that it's not the same Jesus. And we make up stuff. We make up stuff in stories. And as long as we don't take the made-up stuff to form our doctrine, whatever. Okay, let's move on. All right, so Mary's having this question, okay, how's this supposed to look? And he tells her that it's going to be fulfill the seat, the throne of his father David. Well, now she understands, okay, we're talking about the son of David, who was also called the Son of Man. Now we're talking about the Messiah. So the angel is telling me I'm going to give birth to the Messiah. But he goes on and he says, this child will be holy, the Son of God. Now she's having to understand a string of prophecies as being the same that she didn't understand that they were the same before. And it's easier for us looking back because Jesus already came. But if you go back and look forward, it didn't make as much sense to them. This is one of the reasons why we argue about prophecy all the time. Like when we read the book of Revelation, looking at where we are forward, it's a little more complicated to figure out. But once you're on the other side of it, looking back, it makes perfect sense. That's why Paul told us, when he who is perfect comes, then we will know, not in part, but know fully and be known as we're fully known. So there is something to be said about once prophecy happens that it's much easier to understand. But she's prior to the moment. All she understands is the Son of Man and the Son of God, and you can't be the same. But you can be the same if you're born of a virgin. And that's the only way that you can be the same. And that's why no one who believes Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior can ever, 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 ever diminish the truth that Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. Period. The only way God can become flesh, the only way that Jesus can be the Son of God is if he did not have a father on earth. That means he must be born of a virgin. But how could he be the Son of Man? Because he was born of a daughter of God. Right? Like it's the only way. When you think about how all these prophecies converge, that's why the angel had to say, nothing is impossible. Think about this. Let's jump back and do a little prophetic journey very quickly. Genesis chapter 35 and verse 10. God appeared to a man named Jacob. He said, your name is Jacob, but no longer will your name be called Jacob, for you will be called Israel. And then God said, I call you Israel. I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. For a nation and a company of nations will come from you, and kings will come from your body. Jacob, who was the grandson of Abraham, was going to be the one who he would father what would be the nation that God prophesied to Abraham. So now all of a sudden it's known that Jacob will be the father of what is to be this nation that is called Israel, that is the nation that God set apart to be in his land that he promised to Abraham. I'm flying. I've got like 4 minutes. That's the prophecy. But exactly how is that supposed to look? So now that's chapter 35. Now we're in chapter 49 and verse 10. Now Jacob, who is called Israel, is looking at his kids and a couple of his grandkids, and he recognizes, oh, this is the nation. There was no nation. There were no kings. There were no rulers. There were just 12 people in front of an old man. And he just began to prophesy. You prophesy over your kids. Put your hands on their heads and just prophesy over them. And so he gets to Judah. Israel gets to Judah. And he says, the ruler's staff will remain between your feet, and the scepter will not depart from you, Judah. Now, it's not just that kings would come from Israel, but there would be a specific king who would come through the family of Judah. Now, Judah then, his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson named Salmon. So we're still in the family of Judah. He marries a young lady named Rahab. Church people, Rahab, that Rahab. New church people, this is a lady in the Old Testament that sold herself in order to take care of her family. Judge her if you want to. Salmon marries Rahab. Rahab has a child named Boaz. Boaz is now an old man. There's a young woman named Ruth whose husband died in battle. She was a good lady. She stayed connected to her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law said, I'm going back to my hometown. I'm not going to stay here and be a burden to you. And Ruth said, if you're going, I'm going. So they all go to her mother-in-law, Naomi, to her hometown. Now this Ruth is young. Boaz is old. Don't forget, Boaz is the son of Rahab. Naomi gets them together. Boaz and Ruth get together, have a child named Obed. Obed has a child named Jesse. Jesse has 8 sons. And number 8, the least of these, number 8, God shows up and says, I found a king who has a heart after me. God chose David of Jesse. Do you see this? And then God says this to David in 2 Samuel chapter 7 and verse 12. He says, when your days are fulfilled and you rest with your fathers, I will raise up a descendant after you who will come from your own body. And I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Mary, the daughter of Eli, the grandson of Maliah, the son of Mana, the son of Nathan, the son of David. God fulfilled his promise that someone from David would give birth to the king. But the king wasn't the son of David, but the son of God. And they didn't know it. They didn't understand it like that. They didn't realize that God was going to become flesh by the word becoming 46 chromosomes planted in the womb of a daughter of David, and that she would give birth, a child of David would give birth to the Son of God. And we wonder, how can he do something for us? All she said was, once the angel told her all about it, all that was left was this: behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. I just want to tell you this morning, the underdog, the one who's just wondering, how is God going to use me? You haven't seen, my life is a mess. He's been using underdogs for a long time. And if God speaks a word in your heart that you don't think you deserve, there is but one response that is applicable for you, and that is this: behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word.